The conch and the silver, the latter half. For Sutras. An original dramatic adaptation of the Katastha portion of Vikaspati Mishra's Bhamati, from Yathato Brahma Jijnasa to Tatu Samanvayat. A philosophical disputation play, in the style of the classical Sanskrit Veda, in a prologue, for acts, and an epilogue, the next evening of the conch and the silver. Based on the arguments of the Bhamati, this is not a translation of the original text, but an independent creative work. The characters of this evening. The Sutradhara, the stage manager. Vikaspati Mishra, the commentator, host of the debate, the Siddhantin. The Memsaka ritualist, a staunch scholar of the Jaiminian tradition, who holds that the sole purpose of the Veda is the injunction of ritual action, this evening's chief Pravapakin. The objector, the doubter, the same voice of doubt from the previous evening, the questioner on behalf of the assembly. A young sannyasi, who has come with a question about the sequence of the asramas. The disciple, Vikaspati's disciple. The Pariad, the whispering of the assembly. Setting, the same debate hall, the next evening. The cord and the conch near the door still lie there, just as they were left yesterday. But today a new object has been placed upon the table, a palm leaf manuscript, lying open, on whose first page for short sutras are written. Prologue. The Sutradhara enters, gesturing toward the manuscript. Last night in this assembly the tale of the conch and the silver was told, what illusion is, and what its answer says about the world. But yesterday's debate ended upon a promise that has not yet been kept. If this entire visible world is superimposed upon the self, like silver upon the conch, then from where will knowledge of that self, of that Brahmin, come? The eye does not see it, inference does not measure it. Only one door remains, the word, the Veda. Exit. Act 1. The necklace at the throat. First sutra, Athato Brahma Jijnasa, then, therefore, the inquiry into Brahmin. Vikaspati is seated. A young sannyasi enters, bowing.
Acharya, I have come with a question that has spread through my Gurukula like fire. The first word of the sutra is Atha. Then. My ritualist classmates say, then means. After the inquiry into Dharma. First study the whole of MMA with Makran Si with Makran, learn all the sacrifices, and only then, somewhere down the road, will one earn the right to reflect upon Brahman. I ask, is this true? Does the ritual stand guard at the door of the inquiry into Brahman?
A question that spreads like a new fire in every generation, and in every generation is quenched with the same water. First count the 4 possible meanings of Atha, as is the classical method, Anantarya. Immediately after this, Adhikara, now begins, as in Atha Saptanasasanam, Atha Yaganasasanam, Magala, an auspicious sound, like that of a conch or a kettledrum, and Apakita Pravada, after that which is first required. The Magala position is simple, Om and Atha, these 2 words first issued from the throat of Brahma. This smrti is satisfied by the auspiciousness of the mere sound, just as the sight of a water-filled pot, brought for some other errand entirely, is held auspicious, though it was not brought for that purpose. The real question is, does Atha declare immediate succession upon the karma MMA with Makranase with Makran?
It does, and it must. Hear my case at full strength, for last night you allowed my co-religionist to speak in full, and I am entitled to the same courtesy. Before the student who has completed his Vedic study lie 2 paths, the inquiry into Dharma and the inquiry into Brahman. The inquiry into Dharma comes first, because ritual yields fruit, heaven, progeny, prosperity and inclination toward fruit is natural. And Brahman knowledge too, if it is to come at all, comes through the purification wrought by ritual once the mind has been made clear. So the sequence stands bound, first action, then knowledge, just as the field is first plowed, and then the seed.
The simile of the field is dear to me, so with that very simile I shall answer, but first a distinction, upon which this entire act will rest. What is the difference between Dharma and Brahman? Dharma is sadhya, a thing to be accomplished, a thing of the future, the sacrifice today, heaven tomorrow. Brahman is siddha, already, from the very first, from all eternity, attained. And this very distinction cuts down the entire doctrine of sequence. A thing that is done has four courses: origination, as bread from flour; modification, as rice from paddy; consecration, as sprinkling water upon the mortar; attainment, as milking the cow. Moksha, the state of Brahman, is none of these four. It is not produced, it is not transformed, it is not polished, and it is not even attained, because it is already attained. Like the necklace lying at one's own throat, which a man forgets, and goes searching for through the whole house. When the necklace is found, what was attained? Nothing, only the forgetting departed. Therefore Brahman knowledge is not the fruit of any ritual act, and for that which is no fruit, no cue of rituals is mandatory.
Then ritual has no place at all? My entire sastra is useless?
Exactly the opposite, it has a place, but a stair, not a throne. Hear the sequence: from the obligatory rites, the destruction of sin; from the destruction of sin, purity of mind; from purity of mind, dispassion; from dispassion, the desire to know. Ritual is aradapakaraka, a helper from afar, as the curtain is drawn aside before the dancers dance. The one who draws the curtain does not dance, yet without him the dance is not seen. And if anyone should say that the sequence is mandatory, that sannyasa comes only after the householder's stage, then the Jabalisriti stands there: Yadahariva virajet tadahariva pravrajet, on whatever day dispassion arises, on that very day let him go forth. From studenthood straight to renunciation, the Sriti itself has opened the door. Tell your classmate, there is no guard at the door, there is only a threshold, and its name is Ada, therefore.
Ada, the second word of the sutra. Its meaning?
The four means, without which the desire to know is no desire at all: discrimination between the eternal and the non-eternal, dispassion toward the enjoyments of this world and the next, the endowment of tranquility, restraint, and the rest, and the yearning for liberation. And here the Prabhupaka brings a juicy objection, which I shall recite with full relish: why dispassion? There are bones in the fish, does anyone therefore give up fish? He picks out the bones and eats the flesh. There is husk on the paddy, the farmer does not throw away the paddy. No one shuts down his kitchen for fear of beggars. Just so, if suffering comes mixed into the world, what of it? Leave the suffering, enjoy the pleasure.
And the answer?
The answer in a single sentence: the fish bone is separate, and therefore it can be picked out. But from a meal in which poison has been dissolved into the honey, not even the most skillful cook in the world can eat the honey alone. The pleasure of the world is just such a meal: suffering is dissolved into it, it cannot be picked out. And Sriti passages like, we drank the soma, we became immortal. The Pura itself opens that lock: endurance until the dissolution is called immortality, a secondary immortality, lasting only until the pralaya, not the true one. The fruit of tranquility and restraint. Just as a calm, well-broken young bullock is fit to be yoked to the plough, a restless mind can lift no yoke at all.
One final knot, Bakaspati, and it is a knot of words. Brahmajijnasa, in this compound, what case is Brahma? Certain ancient interpreters say the dative, the desire to know for the sake of Brahmin. Then Brahmin is not the object of the inquiry but its purpose, and this whole edifice of yours, the object of the inquiry is Brahmin, will come crashing down.
And this is precisely the place where I openly disagree with a commentator earlier than myself. Honesty in Sastra lies exactly in this, that disagreement is not concealed. The compound is a genitive tatpurua, the inquiry into Brahman, the objective genitive, Brahman the object. Why? Because jijnasa is a transitive hunger. No one, on seeing the sun or the moon, asks, whose is this? But the moment the word knowledge is heard, the question rises of its own accord: knowledge of whom? Of what? Knowledge without an object is an unfinished sentence. And whatever else is connected with Brahman, the means, the fruit, the manner, comes dragged in of itself, just as on hearing, the king is going, the king is understood together with his retinue, no one separately mentions the minister, the parasol, the army.
I shall go back to my Gurukula and tell them, the door is open, and the name of the key is dispassion, not wages.
Act 2. The Garland and the Thread. Second Sutra, Janmadhyasya Yata, that from which the birth and the rest of this world proceed.
Good, Acharya, the right to inquire is established. But inquiry into what? Into Brahmin. And what is Brahmin? Here I shall drag you back to yesterday's conch. Every object I know, pot, tree, body, all are limited, insentient, perishable. Brahmin you declare to be the opposite of all these, infinite, conscious, eternal. Then what defining mark will you give it? No property of its own is familiar to me, and no familiar property is in it. Inquiry without a defining mark, that is hunting a black cat in the dark.
And Dharya's second sutra is a lamp in precisely that darkness, Janmadhyasya Yata, that from which come the birth, the subsistence, and the dissolution of this world. Take note, the definition has not been given through Brahman's own attributes, it has been given through the world, by an accidental mark. Just as the sun's motion is not seen directly, but its being in the east at dawn and in the west at dusk, its arriving at place after place, becomes the sign of its motion, even so the world, which has arisen from Brahman, is Brahman's sign, though Brahman itself is hidden from the eye.
Janmati, birth and the rest. What shall we count in this and the rest? Yaska's Nirukta enumerates 6 modifications: birth, existence, growth, transformation, decay, destruction. Why did the sutra maker take only 3?
Because all 6 are contained within the 3, and Sastra does not squander. Growth is contained in birth. A cloth grown larger by 2 threads means the new birth of 2 threads, transformation likewise in birth. Gold become a bangle is the arising of a new state, decay is contained in destruction. 3 remain, origination, subsistence, dissolution, and these 3 are declared in the Sriti, hence these 3 are the ones intended.
The definition I grant. But now the real question, what is this sutra? Is it an inference, the world has a maker, because it is an effect, like a pot? If so, then call back yesterday's Buddhist, he will do battle with that inference, and your Brahmin will hang upon the scales of logic, where the god of Udayana and of Gajya hangs.
And this is the heart of this act, so listen slowly. No, this sutra is not an independent inference. Seeing the fashioning of the world, parceled into name and form, filled with countless agents and enjoyers, so ordered by place, time, and occasion that even the mind strains to imagine it, the black antelope only in certain lands, the cuckoo's call only in certain seasons, the cranes conceiving from the first thunder of the rains. Seeing all this, an intelligent man does indeed form a surmise about a cause, as there is no pot without a potter. But in Vedanta that surmise is not the proof, it is a helper. The sutra's real work is another. The purpose of the sutras is to string the sentences of Vedanta upon a thread, like a garland. The flowers belong to Sriti, Yato va imani bhutani jayante, tad Brahma, the dialogue of Bhgu and Varua, the Taittiriya. The sutra is only the thread. Brahman is knowable through the word alone, upon the scales of logic it never once climbed at all.
Then has reasoning no place at all in your house?
It has a place, as reasoning that follows the Sriti, not as independent reasoning. The Sriti itself says, the learned, intelligent man reaches the land of Gandhara, but only then, when someone has first told him the road. The Sriti is the teller of the road, reasoning is the walker. And here lay aside a distinction, over which the entire war of the 4th act will be fought. Between the means of knowledge in the inquiry into Dharma and the inquiry into Brahman there is a difference at the root. In Dharma, option operates. In the Adaratra, lift the Owen cup or do not lift it, make the offering before sunrise or after, both procedures, both valid, because ritual is Purva Tantra, dependent upon the one who acts. but a thing. The pot is there, or it is not, here no option operates. A thing is vasta tantra, it is just as it is, by my wish it does not move this way or that. And Brahman knowledge is knowledge of a thing, not an injunction. Keep this sentence in mind, in the fourth act it will become a sword.
Act 3. The dancer's body. Third sutra, Sastrayanitvad, because of being the womb of the Sastra.
The third sutra is short, carrier, but it appears two-faced. Sastrayanitvad, some read it as, Brahmin is the womb of the Sastra, the cause of the Veda, some read it as, the Sastra is the womb of Brahmin, the proof of Brahmin. Which is right?
Both, and here both in order, for the two together hold each other up, like the two stones of an arch. The first meaning, this vast mass of Sastra, the Veda and the rest, filled with countless branches of learning, the illuminator of all things like a lamp, its source is Brahman, and from its being the source, Brahman's omniscience is established. The rule is straightforward, the author's knowledge is greater than the book. Pini composed the grammar, was Pini's knowledge contained within the Adhi? No, the tongue knows the difference between the sweetness of sugarcane juice, of milk, and of jaggery, speech cannot state it, the speaker's knowledge is always ahead of his utterance. Then he whose utterance is the Veda, like the outbreathing of this great being, who shall set the limit of his knowledge?
And right here, Vakaspati, stands the oldest wall of my house, and I wish to see how you bring it down. An author of the Veda? The Veda is Aparuya, authorless. A beginningless tradition of recitation, from teacher to pupil, from pupil to pupil, without any first composer. Jaimini's entire philosophy stands upon this: what has no mouth has no fault.
I shall not bring the wall down, friend, I shall shift it, and you will see that even after it has been shifted it still stands. First, one thing that you too must concede, you call the phoneme eternal, the sound ga, ever one and the same, granted. But the sentence? That particular order of the words, that sequence. Order is formed in utterance, and utterance is non-eternal. Hence the manifestation of a Vedic sentence is new every time. Now hear my favorite simile: the pupil learning dance watches the movement of the teacher's body and imitates that sequence in his own body, the teacher's movement itself does not walk over into the pupil's body. Even so with Vedic recitation, every generation a new utterance, in imitation of the old order. Then the question, after the dissolution, when every throat is silent and every memory lost, who will display that order in the new creation? Jaimini says creation and dissolution.
And the second meaning? The Sastra is the womb of Brahmin, the proof meaning?
The second meaning is the shield of the first. If anyone had supposed that the Janmati Sutra was an inference, this sutra cuts that error away. Knowledge of Brahman's extraordinary nature comes from the Sastra alone, neither from the eye, nor from reasoning. The Sastra is Brahman's womb, its sole door of proof. And exactly here, friends, this evening has arrived at its true battlefield. For if the sole proof of Brahman is the Veda, then a decision upon the purpose of the Veda now becomes unavoidable. And on that question this disciple of Jaimini sits before me with the entire army of his school at his back. Your turn, friend. Come at full strength. Yesterday I told the Nayaka that to one who has abandoned the center of the citadel there is no need to surrender its outer walls. Tonight I am opening the gate of my own fortress with my own hands.
Act 4. Samanvaya. Fourth Sutra, Tat 2 Samanvayat, but that because of the concordance. The Memsaka ritualist comes to the middle of the assembly. The lamps are raised high, this is the greatest debate of the evening.
Then hear Jaimini's entire case, uncut and untrimmed. The purpose of the Veda is one, to set men into action. Amnayaja Kriyarthatvat, the Veda is for the sake of action. Why? Because the meaningfulness of a word lies in its purpose, and its purpose lies in engagement and abstention. There is fruit on the river bank, what did this sentence give to anyone? If the hearer does not go to fetch the fruit, the sentence has dissolved into the air. The statement of an accomplished thing is either useless, or the leavings of another means of knowledge. What the eye can see, why should the Vedas say it? Therefore the sentences of Vedanta have only three courses: either they are the subsidiary of some injunction, declaring the nature of the agent or of the deity, as Vair Vikapi Devata is a limb of the sacrifice, or they are themselves injunctions of meditation. Atma Dravaya means meditate upon the self, a Pratipati Vidi, a command of meditation for the seeker of immortality, or they are Arthavada, praise of the injunction, as in Jaimini Sutra, the Dinativi Ekavakyatvat. Stuti Arthana Vidansyu. And experience too stands on my side, even after hearing tat tvam pleasure, pain, and fear remain exactly as they were. If that sentence bestowed the already accomplished state of Brahman, liberation would follow upon the very hearing, yet the hearer loses his temper again by evening, is frightened again. Therefore concede, the statement of the accomplished is fruitless. Vedanta is the servant of injunction, and yourself is like the sacrificial post and the Ahavanya fire, a limb of the ritual, knowledge of which is needed for the sake of the sacrifice, not for the sake of liberation.
A deep whispering, the case has been made at full strength.
A fortress, honestly built, and I shall take it down with the same honesty, stone by stone. The first stone, the statement of the accomplished, is fruitless. The sutra's answer lies in a single word, samanvayat, because all the sentences of Vedanta converge upon one and the same purport. Sad eva samidam agra asid, in the beginning, gentle one, this was being alone, ekam evad vidyam, one only, without a second, atma va idam eka avagra asid, in the beginning this was the self alone. From opening to conclusion a single note, and the rule for determining purport is, to abandon what is said, and to imagine what is not said, is a fault. The entire Upanishad speaks Brahman, the injunction is your addition.
But where is the answer to fruitlessness? Let the statement be of Brahman, what is the fruit?
And here, friend, your own touchstone will turn against you. The statement of the accomplished is fruitless, is it, indeed? Hear a story, which is the dearest page of my Bhamati. A Dravya, who knows not a single syllable of the Arya tongue, is seated in an assembly. A messenger comes and says to Devdatta, Devdatta, blessings upon you, a son has been born to you. Devdatta's body thrills with joy, his eyes and face bloom like an opened lotus. What did the Dravya see? No action. Devdatta did not rise and go anywhere, did nothing. Only one piece of accomplished news, a son is born, and a tide of joy. From that thrill the Dravya understood, in this sentence there was some beloved meaning. So tell me, is the statement of the accomplished fruitless? One sentence, without any command, made a man's hair stand on end. And if the small accomplished fact, a son is born, yields so much fruit, then, thou thyself art that fearless, unaging, deathless Brahman, for the one whose knot of ignorance is cut on hearing this accomplished truth, is the fruit any less?
Then what shall we do with injunction-shaped sentences like Atma Dravaya? Is to be seen, that is a command, surely.
It has the form of a command, not the force of one, like a knife drawn across stone, the shape of a knife, the edge blunt. This sentence lays no new duty upon anyone, it merely turns the outward-facing man, who by nature flows toward objects, and sets him flowing inward. The dam turns the river's current, it produces no new water. The real work belongs to the sentence that is met after the turning, tat tvam aci. And whether that sentence is an injunction or a declaration of the accomplished, that will be decided by that very distinction which I laid down in the second act, and now that sword leaves its sheath. Ritual is puru tantra, do it, do not do it this way, do it that way, option operates, lift the Owen cup, or do not. But knowledge? Knowledge is vastatantra. The pot stands before me, and so, the pot is, here no ought operates, no option operates, no command operates. Command me, take this pot to be cloth. I shall not be able so to know it, though I wish it 100,000 times. Knowledge is subject to the thing, not to the agent. Therefore, no Brahman can never even be the object of an injunction. Knowing comes not from command but from a means of knowledge. And the means of knowledge, the sentence of the Upanishad, stands before us, like a gleaming pot in clear white light.
But my objection from experience still lives. Even after hearing Tat Tvam Aci, fear and grief remain just as they were, so where did that knowledge take place?
Because between hearing and knowing lies as great a distance as between the seed and the tree. Rava is the first step, after it, Jnana, the firming of the meaning by reasoning, after that, Nididhyasana, continuous, unbroken contemplation. In the half-light of dusk, so long as the doubt, a stump or a man, keeps circling, there is no certainty, and the sentence heard with doubt still attached is not knowledge, but the beginning of knowledge. Just as the student of music hears Aja and Abha on the first day, and after a year's practice recognizes them, the ear the same, the notes the same, but direct recognition comes through practice. And when direct realization comes, what happens then? Hear it in 4 negations, for this is the summit of this chapter. Moksha is not a thing produced, what is produced perishes, like a pot. Not a modification, the curd made from milk does not remain forever. Not a consecration, consecration is of 2 kinds, the adding of a quality, as dyeing crystal with hibiscus juice, the removal of a defect, as scouring a mirror with brick dust. To Brahman nothing can be added, and in it there is nothing to remove. The gem does not shine by being scoured like the mirror. The purity of the bath and the upanayana is the adventitious purity of the jiva, as the heroine's perfume seems to have settled upon her friend. And not an attainment either, and here is my dearest simile of all, the traveler in the boat. The boat moves toward midstream, bank, foam, and waves all fall away behind, and the traveler arrives at that waveless, calm, clear, still middle. Did he find that middle as something new? No, the water was everywhere, he merely moved away from the waves. Brahman is all-pervading, eternally attained, the illusion of attainment was only the trick of the waves. All 4 courses are closed, beyond these 4 there is no 5th road by which ritual might enter into moksha, therefore, knowledge apart, not even the shadow of ritual enters into moksha.
And the one who, living and waking, has come to know this? The body will still remain, hunger will still come.
It will remain, as the sluice snake has cast off lies upon the anthill, dead, discarded, and the snake free of it. The body is the slough of Prarabdha. He who has given up both wealth and the love of wealth, what fear has he of thieves? He walks in the market, he eats and drinks, and within he is waveless, Jivan Mukta. And on that day, friend, a wonder occurs, which I shall make the final sentence of this evening, Aha Brahmasmi, in this knowledge all injunctions and all means of knowledge come to an end. A prama is relative to a knower, where the sense of being a knower has melted away, there the prama too comes to rest, as at daybreak the lamp's work is done. The lamp was no lie, through the night it was truth itself. But when the sun has risen, no one blows it out, it fades of its own accord, like a fire whose fuel is spent. Your ritual is that lamp, friend, the true companion of the whole night. My quarrel was never.
I am a man of the morning side, Bakaspati, and it is I who light the lamps at dawn. But tonight you have compelled me to concede this much, that the light my lamp gives does not come from the wick.
And upon no lovelier sentence has any debate on Samanvaya ever ended.
Epilogue. The Sutradhara returns. He lifts the manuscript from the table and places it beside the conch near the door. Yesterday this conch taught us what illusion is. Today this book has taught us where the road out of illusion stands written, and that road is not a command, it is news. A son has been born to you. On merely hearing this much, Devadatta's body had thrilled, the messenger had ordered no work to be done. The Upanishad is just such a messenger, and its news is greater than that. The one you have been searching for all your life is the necklace lying at your own throat. The 4 sutras were 4 steps, the right to inquire, the defining mark of Brahmin, the authority of the Sastra, and the concordance of purport, and all four steps lead toward a single threshold, where the hearer comes to understand that the one of whom the messenger was speaking is no one other than himself. If tonight you carry this book away in your mind, then keep it like a garland. The flowers belong to Sruti, the thread to the sutra maker, and the stringing falls to every reader, each for himself. All the characters exit. The lamp goes out last of all, and the conch and the book, side by side, remain left behind near the door. A note on this adaptation: the argument dramatized above follows, in condensed and revoiced form, the principal movements of the Katastha portion of Vakaspati Mishra's Bhamati. In the first sutra, the examination of the four meanings of the word atha, the refutation of a mandatory sequence of ritual before knowledge, the exclusion of moksha from the four courses of origination, modification, consecration, and attainment. The illustration of the necklace at the throat, the Jabala Sruti, the fourfold means, the Pravapakin S chain of illustrations, the fishbone and the rest, and the answer of the food in which poison is mixed with honey, the secondary sense of the Soma Sruti, the simile of the young bullock, and the refutation of the dative reading of Brahma in the compound. In the second sutra, the accidental definition, the simile of the sun's motion, the inclusion of Yaska's 6 modifications of being within the triad, the description of the world's variety, the black antelope, the cuckoo, the crane's conception, the denial that the sutra is an inference and the garland and thread principle, reasoning as subordinate to Sruti, the Gandhara Sruti, and the establishment of the Vastu-tantra, Purva-tantra distinction. In the third sutra, both interpretations, Brahmin as the cause of the sastra, the illustration of Pini and the ineffability of the tastes of sugarcane, milk, and jaggery. The sastra as the proof of Brahmin, the non-eternality of sequence, the simile of the dance teacher and pupil, the reconciliation of the positions of Jomini and Vyasa, and the sense of Vaparuya, acceptable to both sides. And in the fourth sutra, the full-strength statement of the Memsaka's doctrine that the Veda is for the sake of action, the Pratipatavidi, the Arthavada, the illustration of the sacrificial post and the Ahavanya, and the objection from experience that fear and grief persist even after hearing Tat Tvam Aci, the Siddhanta established through Samanvaya, the unity of opening and conclusion, the Dravya, Devadatta illustration of the fruitfulness of stating an accomplished fact, the knife. Upon stone simile for Atmadravya, the thing-dependence of knowledge, the denial of all four courses of the maid with respect to moksha, the simile of the boat traveler. The hibiscus and the crystal, the mirror and the gem, the heroine and her friend, Rava, Manana and Ididhyasana, and the practice illustration of Aja and the rest, Jivan Mukti, the snake's slough, and the coming to rest of all means of knowledge in Taha Brahmasmi. This dialogue is an original creative composition built around the argumentative structure of the text. It does not quote the Sanskrit, or the English translations, upon which it is based, and the Memsaka, the objector, the young sannyasi, and the disciple are composite characters who give voice to positions raised and answered by the commentary itself, not portrayals of named historical persons.